basketball hoops, classic cars, a rail leading down into an icy blue pool, a sunset over cloud cover framed by an airplane window. These are the analog photos. Photos captured so often that they're basically memes, and yet we still feel compelled to take them when given the opportunity. Don't lie. I know you've taken these photos. I certainly have. I laugh at myself when I get caught in the gravity of a Cadillac headlight hit by golden hour sun just right, and yet I snap the picture anyways, because I just can't resist. There's something about these photos, these tropes, that captivates us. Maybe it's the same force that pulls us towards analog mediums in the first place. Certainly these tropes don't seem to have the same grip on digital photographers, do they? Digital has its own set of tropes, flowers in bloom and pictures of the moon. So what is this about? Why do we, as film photographers, gravitate towards capturing certain subject matter on film? In this video, I'm going to talk about tropes, repetition, liminal spaces, and nostalgia. I want to investigate why analog photography is so repetitive. For those of you who are new here, my name is Yvonne, and I put out new photography-related content almost every week. So if you like this video and you want to see more like it, you can go and check out the other videos on my channel. I have a whole playlist for video essays related to photography. I also do gear reviews, street photography, POVs, etc. So go and check that out on my channel and subscribe if you want a new video almost every week. So jumping right in, I want to draw your attention to this Instagram account. It's called Analog Repeat, and it was this account that got me thinking about this video topic in the first place. A lot of the photo compilations and things that you're going to see in this video are taken from this account. So go and give them a follow and give them some love for the work that they're doing in putting all of these photos together. I'm sure it is not an easy process to collect and amass this many nearly identical film photos, so Analog Repeat, shout out to them. I find this page both hilarious and soul-crushing. Hilarious because I have taken like 50% of the photos that are shown on it, and soul-crushing for the same reason. Whenever I snap a picture of something that is just too photogenic, I start getting in my head about how many photographers have taken the exact same photo in the exact same way before me. How many people stood in the same spot and saw the same thing with the sun hitting it the same way? Have I ever had a unique, creative thought in my life? Or is all of my work just derivative, repetitive, snapping at low-hanging fruit, hack job nonsense, forever recycling the same handful of compositions on increasingly expensive film stocks? This page, Analog Repeat, just confronts those feelings, doesn't it? But that is kind of funny. I mean, I find it funny. Analog as a medium has always had an interesting relationship with the concept of uniqueness. Instead of snapping 200 photos of the same thing on your digital camera, you're taking pretty much one photo of that thing on your film camera. That photo now exists as a physical object, created at a specific time in a specific place, and is therefore non-fungible, unique by definition. You can replicate it, but not perfectly, not exactly. The original photograph is still entirely unique among its copies. So to take this medium, analog photography, that creates unique, one-of-a-kind objects, and to find out that hundreds of people are using it to create unique, one-of-a-kind objects that depict the exact same thing is pretty funny. But it's interesting too, right? Because we still take these photos even though we know that they're tropes. We know they're cliche, we know they're not unique, and we take them anyway. I guarantee that if I had the opportunity to take one of these shots, I would never in a million years think somebody else already took this photo, so I won't bother. Honestly, if you pass up an opportunity to take a good photo just because somebody else has taken that photo before you, you're letting other people restrict your art making. Just putting that out there. But considering this, the fact that we are drawn to photograph certain subjects, even though we're aware of the trope, it feels to me like this is more a question of ownership than of uniqueness. This is my photo of a basketball hoop. There are many others like it, but this one is mine. And so the question becomes, why would we all want to own photographs like these? I reached out to the owner of Analog Repeat and I asked them what they thought. And they actually gave me a really interesting reply. I asked them a few other questions first, mostly about their process of collecting these images, and at the end of our conversation, they volunteered some thoughts on this matter. Here's what they said. In my mind, it just has to do with how film photography is reminiscent of a bygone era. Many younger film shooters today seem to be trying to recreate a certain vibe that they get from the old Nat Geographic magazines, or seeing photos of their parents and grandparents, almost as if they are cosplaying the pre-digital generations. This is why analog photography skews heavily towards vintage subject matter. The subject itself is vintage, with most film cameras being decades old, so it becomes a natural pairing. This comment really got me thinking about nostalgia specifically. So many of these film photography tropes are centered around nostalgia, aren't they? We see a lot of classic Americana scenes. Fruit stands, neon signs, desert vistas, sloping hillsides, things that you might have seen on a road trip with your family as a kid. Things that seem mundane now, but that really stand out to you the first time that you see them. They leave an impression in that deep part of your brain that catalogs new and novel experiences. As we age, those novel experiences become fewer and further between. We've seen more, and we're delighted by less. The first neon sign is a wonder, but the 1,000th barely registers. The world around us becomes more ordinary, and that feeling of wonder and novelty returns more frequently as a memory than as a conscious experience. So of course, we're looking for things that jog that memory, bring us a glimmer of how we experienced the world in childhood. And for pre-digital generations, one of the best ways to delineate childhood and adulthood is technology. When I was born in the mid-90s, all photos were taken on film. All through my childhood, my birthday parties, family gatherings, sleepovers, vacations, field trips, all were documented on Kodak disposables. My family albums, the only images that exist externally to my own memory that depict that entire formative part of my life, all exist on that shiny, golden, green, grainy Kodak film. In a way, documenting these more mundane aspects of the world, a car headlight, a railing on a poolside, a basketball hoop, documenting these on film is a way of adding these elements to the repository of memory. The pieces and places that are left out of the family album but still made an impact on you as a kid. That street corner where your friends met after school, you may not have a photo of that street corner, but hey, here's a street corner that looks just like it, hit by the sun in exactly the same way that your street corner would have been on one of those long summer evenings when your parents let you stay out past bedtime because the sun hadn't set yet. Here's a picture of a field, just like the field you might have played in with your cousins as the adults sat around a backyard campfire after the sunset but the sky was still stained blue. Capturing these images on film specifically keeps them in the same set, the same category as the images of childhood, or of your teen years or early adulthood, or however old you might have been before the digital era. It keeps them in that realm of nostalgia, but fills in the gaps, adds detail, builds out a more robust picture of the world, of how life used to be. Maybe that's why we want to own them. It's not a matter of the photograph, but the memory. Looking at a photograph that somebody else has captured can feel nostalgic, but capturing your own photograph in the way that you capture a memory has this special feeling to it that overrides the potential artistic value of your output. So, let's talk about liminal spaces. Liminal spaces are basically defined as empty or abandoned places that appear eerie, forlorn, and often surreal, commonly places of transition and nostalgic appeal. Emphasis on transition and nostalgia. There's this YouTube video about liminal spaces by YouTuber Solar Sands. It investigates liminal spaces and asks what it is about them that feels so eerie. Not to spoil the video, you should definitely watch it as further reading to this topic, but the conclusion he makes is essentially folded around nostalgia. Liminal spaces are images of childhood, places we spent time as kids or have some nostalgic connection to, made eerie by the complete lack of people populating them. Typically busy, bustling spaces, an office building, a mall, a hotel, a daycare center, all with this 80s to 90s aesthetic, but empty. There's a sadness to it, right? Places we're familiar with, nostalgic for, but without the memories that populate them. just the place, just the building. There's this dissonance between the image and the memories associated with it that creates that eerie, unsettling feeling. I would like to posit that these liminal images exist on the same continuum as the tropes of film photography, the continuum of childhood nostalgia and the spectrum of how we experience it as adults. One end of the spectrum is a golden glimmer, the feeling of sun and sunscreen as you climb out of a motel pool, or a popsicle being offered to you as you sit in the grass, the smell of rain on asphalt, a small flash of the joy of childhood. And on the other end of the spectrum is this crushing, isolating, desolate feeling of longing for a time that will never come again, when the people are gone, moved on from the moment, outgrown, and all that remains is an empty building, populated by dim, vague memories that grow further and further away with age. I think it's really fascinating reading through the list of tropes in liminal spaces because they really seem to echo tropes in film photography. Here is a list from Reddit, posted on r/liminal spaces, and look how many of these are film photography tropes. Parking lots illuminated only by streetlights, an empty laundromat, playgrounds at midnight, schools in the summer, unfamiliar rest stops on road trips. Here's another list from Tumblr, and again, we have a lot of crossover. Churches in Texas, abandoned 7-Elevens, rest stops on highways. But when I look at these liminal spaces and I compare them to these nostalgic film photographs, they give me different feelings. But they're of the same subject matter. So why? What makes this set of images liminal and unsettling and eerie, and this set of images glimmery and golden and nostalgic? I'll tell you. These images of liminal spaces are all digital. Cool, right? When I realized this, I had like a galaxy brain moment. When you capture a scene that invokes nostalgia of a pre-digital era on a digital camera, it creates dissonance. There are these spaces that we remember from childhood captured in a way that would have been impossible at the time. They do not fit in the category of images that capture nostalgia. That category is reserved for analog photography, at least for those of us who were brought up in the pre-digital age. These images are distinctly looking back images. They are images of returning to childhood memories long after the moment has passed. And we can tell that the moment has long passed because these images are taken on a technology that didn't exist at that time. On the other hand, these images, these nostalgic film photos, are reliving the moment, rebuilding, reconstructing, filling in the gaps in the memory. As the owner of Analog Repeat puts it, they are cosplaying as pre-digital generations. Tropes in film photography are just as wrapped up in transition and nostalgia as liminal spaces, but the very fact of being taken on film places them on the other end of the spectrum, makes them the kind of image that you want to own and keep, rather than the kind of image that you want to turn away from. Isn't it fascinating how much the medium of a photograph impacts the way that we engage with it? I wanted to make this video because I wanted to explore tropes in film photography as something more than just lack of creative ambition. So often when we talk about these tropes online, it is in the context of copying and recycling trends. As though there was one great photographer one time who decided to snap a picture of a car headlight on Portra 400, and someone saw that and copied them, and so on and so forth. There was one good creative idea one time, and now all images that resemble it are somehow derivative of it. And that is a failing of modern photography, modern art, because no one can come up with unique images anymore, and we're all just recycling the same handful of trendy photos for internet points. I kind of hate that. I hate the idea that sharing images online has somehow poisoned the well of creativity so much that true creativity no longer exists. Because honestly, if one guy got a glimmer of nostalgia one time looking at a basketball hoop that compelled him to photograph it, and he just happened to be the first person ever to photograph a basketball hoop in that way, why should the glimmer of nostalgia that I get looking at that basketball hoop, the creative ambition that compels me to photograph it too, why should that be a subsidiary of his creative genius just because my photograph succeeded his? If we really looked at photography that way, what would be left to photograph? Nothing. Anyways, one more thing that I wanted to mention, kind of tacking back to liminal spaces here, is that not everyone is impacted by these photos in this way. People who were not born and raised in America or Canada aren't going to be impacted deeply by imagery that evokes nostalgia for specifically American places. In this Solar Sands video, he shares some examples of liminal images that were created by somebody who grew up in Russia. And for me, looking at them feels creepy, but it doesn't impact me in any kind of eerie or unsettling way. I mention this because I assume that it means that different places around the world will have different local tropes for film photography. And I think that's pretty cool. It's something that I would be interested in investigating in another video. I'm curious to know how the local film photo tropes compare with the film photography that would be taken of that place by a visitor. If I travel to Japan, am I going to accidentally capture images that fit the tropes of Japanese film photography? Or will my photos fit an entirely different set of tropes that surround how North American travelers document the country? How does the nostalgic quality of analog mediums impact the way that we capture new and novel experiences? I don't know, but it is some food for thought, right? I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future video. And I would be really interested to hear your thoughts on it down in the comment section below. That's all that I had to say today. That is my whole sort of exploration of film photography tropes. I know that this wasn't like a super coherent video essay, but I had a lot of different thoughts on it and I wanted to give time to explore those. So hopefully you guys found that interesting. Thank you so much for watching. Again, let me know down in the comment section what you think if you want to weigh in on this. I know this is a big topic of discussion in the film photography community and I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. If you liked this video, you can leave a like, you can subscribe to my channel, you can click the share button. You don't even have to share it. You can just like highlight the link and then YouTube thinks you shared it and then like gives me internet points for sharing it and stuff. So that'd be great. And I will see you guys next week with a new video. I'm gonna be traveling a little bit more over this weekend, so maybe we'll do some local street photography kind of stuff. I don't know, we'll see. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you back here next week. And in the meantime, I want you to stay sharp and don't forget to keep shooting. Bye guys.